Welcome back to another episode of Keoni Chats. So anytime I talk about my own journey and my reasons to going into the journalism field, I always say that Rich Eisen is the person that inspired me, the person that really drove me to get into this field, because he's so funny when he is just at the desk talking to his co-anchors and talking to other athletes, and even on his own show, the Rich Eisen show, which I listen to periodically. He's an easy person to have a conversation with. He can flip-flop from funny to something serious that the sports world has to face. So while he's always my inspiration for being in this field, Ben Creighton, my guest this week, he is the first person to give me a taste of interaction with the media, as he and I are the same age, and we both went to high school together, and he interviewed me for the high school coach. The then high school coach was stepping down, so he wanted to get some quotes from me, and ended up in the student newspaper, and I remember cutting that out and putting it on my wall and highlighting it and be like, that's me. So we talk about that experience in the interview, and Ben's such a busy guy, whether it's ESPN, Pac-12 Network, or he, during the summers, he does the play-by-play calling for the Portland Pickles. He was able to find just an hour of his time for an interview with me. So this episode you're about to hear, it could be a little quick-paced, just because I want to make sure that I got everything I wanted to get. And, there could be door open for a second interview down the line, but with how busy Ben is, you in my head, in this line of podcasting, you only get really one chance to interview a guest, and you want to make sure that you do your best. So hopefully I did my best. So, but that's up to you, the viewers, to really decide. So, it's knowing that someone I went to high school with, someone I grew up with, was able to take this crazy idea of talking about sports and making stories about sports and represent different companies like ESPN and Pac-12 Network. It just blew my mind, and he's been an inspiration to me ever since I left the University of Oregon. Actually, even during University of Oregon, he was in the back of my mind every time I had classes, in terms of, Ben did this, I think I can too. So we'll see if that line of thinking continues on. You never know what the future holds, but I know right now it's kind of hard to. I'm not really thinking about it, because I think I'm just enjoying this process, this podcast, a whole lot. And but yeah. So if this is your first time checking out the Keoni Chats podcast show, welcome. You can follow the show in social media. That would be at KC Media 13 on both Instagram and Twitter, and then Conlu K Media on Facebook. So if you prefer an audio version, we're located on Spotify and Apple Podcast and Google Podcast. But if you want a video version, just something to play in the background, I will take it. If you wanted me to be just playing in the background, I'm happy with that. So that can be found on YouTube. So subscribe, follow, do everything else you need to do to stay in the loop when episodes are released. Lower right-hand corner of your screen, if you are watching this on YouTube, you'll see a lower third tag for my website, keoniconlu.com, KEONICONLU.com. And that's my personal website. No one's going to push it but me. So, and that is where the video and audio version of all my episodes can be located as well. And my blog series, or my blog entries, can be found whether it is the DC Animated Universe Review Series, the NFL Draft, mock drafts, or if you want to see how I am when I bring my camera out to nature or to a sporting event and take some photos. That's where it all is. So however you are listening to this episode, on whichever platform you prefer, or if you are watching on YouTube, I hope you enjoy my chat with Ben Creighton. So, Ben, first off, I just want to say, uh, to a minor degree, you actually helped me get on this journalism path. I don't know if you remember this, but back in high school, when the head coach at the time, Mr. Coach Mitchell, was leaving,
Yep.
you actually interviewed me, and I got a couple of my quotes put it into the newspaper. I was like, "Oh, you got the fire started," as some say, the kind of egotistical fire of seeing your name in print. So
Well, I appreciate that I got your start, man. That seems forever ago, man.
it really does. Like, just I just remember you approached me. Obviously, we know each other. Before talking about that, I was just like, "Wait, what is he talking about? Wait, this is actually news that a long-term head coach is leaving. What? Do you remember like? I mean, granted that was a lifetime ago, but do you remember just how that newsroom kind of operated back then in high school?
It was so long ago, which is really making me feel old right now. Obviously we're all high school students, but our teacher, Mrs. Janko, did a great job of trying to make it like as much of a newsroom as possible because she wanted to prepare us if that's really the job we wanted to have in the future. It was hectic, well, not I shouldn't say hectic. It was like I said, it really prepared us for because being in this industry, some of it can really be. I guess I'll use hectic. That might be the best word actually. It can be really hectic, and you're slammed for time, and it could be demanding, but at the same time, that's kind of what is really cool about it because you kind of get that thrill. You know what I mean? Because it's so hectic, and you got to make sure your stories are in on time and all that kind of stuff, and trying to track down interviews and whatnot. So it definitely helped my journalism aspirations for sure. Thinking back to those days.
At that time, were you like, what was your kind of driving force behind you wanting to pursue journalism? Because I know for myself, it was like, oh, I see people on NFL Network having fun, cracking jokes, just talking sports. I was like, I want to do that. What was yours?
Kind of the same thing, for a time in high school, I thought maybe I'd try to play like college baseball or something, but I mean, I got looked at by a couple places. But at the same time, I thought back to when I was, 6 years old, and I'd be shooting baskets in my driveway, and I'd be like talking to myself as if I was like calling the game. I would get like awkward stares from people like walking their dogs in the neighborhood. Like you could tell they had that look of, is that kid okay? He's talking to himself. But I knew for a long time I wanted to be in sports journalism, sports TV, because for me that's the next best thing. If I can't be on the field, why not still do something that's also really really fun and I can still be involved with it? And I'm really thankful that I can still be a part of it, and I'm having an absolute blast doing it.
Yeah, because I do remember just I never went to a lot of I never went to a Sunset baseball game. I knew a
Mhm.
good amount of players because obviously I'm a football player. So I knew of your baseball career. Like, taking that same mindset and then playing on a high school field, did you have that same kind of thinking quietly to yourself, like, oh, Ben Creighton's out in the outfield, he runs in and he snags the ball.
No, well, first off, I didn't play in the outfield. I was too
Oh,
tall to play outfield because I was a pitcher and first baseman. But I never really did play by play to myself when I was playing, just because like if I was on the mound, I was just trying to get the guy out.
mm.
So that was kind of like the last thing on my mind. My only focus was, hey, I need to get this guy out because we're in like the sixth. I was a relief pitcher, so we could be in the sixth inning or something and be like, I just need to get this guy out. So
Hmm.
I never thought about that though. I wonder if thinking back, maybe I should have tried that actually. That would have been kind of epic.
Okay, so you're currently, I know you've kind of traveled around because I've sort of followed your career through social media as one does as a high school classmate. I know you're in Arkansas for a while. Where else has this journalism industry have taken you?
So thankfully, after I graduated from Washington State, I didn't have to move that far for my first job because I just moved to Eugene, Oregon. My first job was at the ABC station there. I was there for about a year and a half, and then I moved all the way to Little Rock, Arkansas, which was, the first big move of my life. And then was there for 3.5 years. Pandemic hit, and then I decided, you know what, it's probably the time to make my way back home to Oregon. And
Mm.
I've been back here for a little under a year now or so, and I've just been loving it. I always wanted to try to make it back up here anyway, just because all my friends, all my family are up here, and like I said, I can't complain whatsoever. Getting to do what I love back up here, I mean, I'm loving it.
Yeah.
But that's life in sports journalism. A lot of people, you may have to go to some place you never thought you'd ever be. I have friends who I knew who their first jobs were in North Dakota, and it's interesting to think about. But when you're first starting out, you have to go to like those states or really small towns. You got to get your start somewhere. And like I said, I was thankful that I got my first start in Eugene, but then I had to go all the way to Arkansas, which was definitely quite an experience. But yeah, I've definitely traveled around quite a bit, but overall, I'm happy to be back here in Oregon, in the Pacific Northwest for sure.
So I have, I live close to the Washington Square Mall, which is still in the Beaverton area. So I never really
Okay.
went far. I went to Eugene for, a good chunk of actually college and community college, but I have driven by the old stomping grounds of Sunset High School. They got new turf fields,
Which I'm
baseball, and
jealous of, tremendously jealous of.
right? I was like, where was that when we were playing?
Well, not to take away, Sunset High School's baseball field was good when I played. It was
Mhm.
grass and dirt, but it had so many divots. And like, if it rained even for just like 10 minutes, we weren't going to play that day because it
Yeah.
would just be a flat out lake at like second base.
Yeah.
And when I played first base, behind first base, there's like a little dip
Mhm.
into the outfield. So I was afraid every time I had to like get a foul ball and run behind, I was going to roll my ankle or
Ooh.
something. So I'm really jealous that they now got an all turf field. It's nice. Like I said, I'm not trying to talk crap or anything about the old field. It was great, but
Yeah.
it definitely needed some improvements for sure. And I'm glad that the new generation got it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel the same way. Anytime like I drive by and I see their new like rec fields and it's like turf, and I even like snuck on statute of limitations. I'm good. I snuck onto the
Uh,
field and played on it. And I was just like, I'm happy for these guys, but also like, oh, if only if we had that, we still wouldn't have like a winless season, but still would have been nice,
well,
man.
and I was thinking about this too. Sunset football right now, they're killing it.
They are. Oh my,
Like
like,
I watched like one of the high school shows, I think like 2 weeks ago, and I didn't know they were, I could be wrong, they were in contention for like the state title last year or something. I'm like, man, things have changed since we were there.
yeah, like time out, time out, time out. Are you sure? I mean, there might be a Sunset High School in like, Southern Oregon. Who knows? But
Yeah.
yeah,
No, man. Like I said, it's a lot of things have changed since we were there.
yeah. And then, so that time when you did, because I think Washington State is a, is it a pretty, also a pretty high journalism school or?
Yeah, they're pretty highly regarded journalism school. I'm trying to think of alums who went there. Sidney Brunson, who was with ESPN, went there. Um, if you're a college football fan, Keith Jackson.
Mhm.
He's proud Wazoo alum. Rest in peace. Um, yeah, a lot of very very highly regarded journalism school out here on the West Coast for sure.
Mhm. And so after my couple years, I did end up transferring to University of Oregon. I just remember, to my knowledge, it was like, University of Oregon. That was like Oregon's prominent journalism school. I mean, PSU had its thing, but as
Yeah.
far as like that kind of inter school rivalry between Washington State and UW, I know it's kind of like maybe not the same, but what was that like trying to jump from being in Oregon your whole life, I don't know if we call it Civil War anymore. I don't think we can, but
No, they're now
yeah.
calling it just like the rivalry series or something like that.
Yeah, what is it like jumping from that, just like seeing that as a fan, to seeing this other kind of rivalry of Washington State?
It's definitely interesting because obviously being around both Oregon versus Oregon State and also being around Washington State versus Washington. I mean, they're both tremendously intense. Um, Man, I'll tell you, because obviously going to a bunch of games between Wazoo and UW, it gets really intense. It really does. So it's not that much different from when you go to a game between Oregon and Oregon State, but it's still really really intense, and it obviously makes for a tremendous college atmosphere once it gets to like late November.
Yeah, yeah, and then I think he was a little bit after your time, but you it's on the topic list. I have to ask, What was your thoughts about Minshew mania, the whole craze? You even have a photo on your Instagram of you with the mustache and headband. What were your thoughts?
First of all, the only time I'll probably ever grow a mustache in my life. Only time I'll ever grow one. Because everybody I knew was like, okay, once this game's over, please get rid of that. But the one thing, first off, is I was jealous of everybody back in Pullman got to experience that. Regarded as the best season in program history. College game day finally came there. And I enjoyed watching it from afar in Arkansas. And man, Minshew, I mean, he'll forever be a Pullman legend. I
Mhm.
mean, he probably will never need to buy a drink ever in the rest of his life if he ever goes back to Pullman ever again. So it was just really fun to watch him play that year. And it'll be interesting to see how his NFL career continues to pan out. I know he just got traded to the Eagles from Jacksonville, and no, but watching that season, man, that was definitely really really fun and some good times. Unfortunately, Wazoo's not doing as well now, but no, that was really fun to watch at the time for sure.
I know. As that game against Washington State and then Oregon, I'm always like, why can't we take this kid down? I mean, he's he's not doing too much to like blow you away. He wasn't Marcus Mariota where he's
Right.
like sprinting for like 80 yards, but he was dissecting the defense. I was like, what the hell? Where'd this mustache headband kid come from?
You
All
bet.
right.
I mean, it got well for Wazoo fans. It got nerve wracking at the end because Oregon made that big push in like the second half, and they cut it
Mhm.
to was it like a touchdown? I think in the fourth quarter
Mhm.
after trailing by I think like 28-0 or something. I have to go back and watch that game again.
Yeah.
But no, that was a heck of a game.
Again, so my process when it comes to for these interviews, I do a deep dive. I did find, I believe it was a photo of one of your packages when you're in homecoming. You're in front of like
Mm.
the cougar statue, light underneath you, so you look very menacing. And then you also had like another package where you're singing karaoke with an Oregon State receiver.
Oh,
First off, for the Wazoo homecoming one, where did that idea come from to have the lighting and just to I didn't see the package, but I just from that image, it's just like something creative and fun happened there.
yeah. So that was like I said, that was my first job when I was working at the ABC station in Eugene. I traveled up to Pullman for the Washington State Oregon State game, and I was trying to figure out like, okay, where's a good spot to set up? And I thought, you know what the heck? Why not in front of the Cougar statue? And the lighting you see underneath, it's one of those lights, it's like in the concrete to make the
Mm,
Cougar statue light up at night.
yeah.
So I was kind of like, okay, maybe I can use this to my advantage. But the problem is that if you see in the picture, it's looking up at me,
Mhm.
so it kind of makes it a little bit of an odd angle. But I thought it turned out fine, and I think I was kind of like, I gotta get the cougar statue in the background somehow. It's hard for me to set up a camera because I mean, me, I'm tall, I'm 6'5", so and sometimes those tripods aren't very tall,
No.
so sometimes it made it a little hard. But I mean, thankfully that turned out okay.
Yeah, even so, we're talking through Zoom, but I do have a second camera. Even try and get that camera set up
Uh-huh.
before my interviews, so it gets another angle. That also, it's like this whole time I'm talking to you, I'm thinking, is it crooked? Is it straight? Is it gonna stay on? I didn't even know. How did you? Because did you do that? Cover that game by yourself, or did you have someone come with you?
I was all by myself.
Oh, dude, how did you not stress out about that camera the whole time?
Well, that's the life of a lot of people who go into like local TV news. If you're a sports reporter, I mean, nowadays you probably have to do almost everything on your own. You got to shoot the game. You got to run your own stand-ups. You got to take a laptop with you to edit all the highlights and your packages and stuff. It's they call it one-man banding in the industry, and that's how it is right now. But at the same time, you learn a lot of valuable skills because I always say, it's important in anything to be versatile. So, it's a lot of work for sure. It could cause some stress once in a while, but at the same time, it teaches you really good lessons of being in like local TV and stuff.
Yeah, and then because I remember while in school I worked with like this third party website that still works very closely with the Oregon Ducks, and then I was covering like the Utah game, for example, and then I was trying to write up the highlights and do all this and this and this. I didn't have a car at the time, so I was like, I'll figure it out. And I'm not sure how many Duck games you went to, but the walk from Autzen Stadium to the campus, you go through a forest. Doing that in the dark, it's it's not fun.
Oh, I bet. I couldn't imagine.
Yeah,
Well, obviously, growing up as a both my parents went to the University of Oregon, so
mm,
I kind of got raised as a Duck fan. So obviously, I went to a bunch of. I know that walk you're talking about. I've done that
yeah,
a million times. I've never done it at night, so I can imagine that's probably a little creepy. I think.
a little bit. But for
Yeah.
you, when it does get a little much, or maybe early on when you're trying to create a new routine, what was your how do you kind of funnel through all these different things coming at you that you have to do? How do you keep yourself organized and focused?
Man, first of all, like I said, as I said before, in this industry, you'll be faced with a lot of stress. But at the same time, it can get stressful at times. But the one thing I always tell myself is kind of like, dude, you're covering sports. You're around sports. I mean, yeah, it can be hectic. It could be long days, but I mean, you're around sports. I mean, for example, I'll make up an example here. I could be covering the game between Oregon and Oregon State at Autzen Stadium. You may be at Autzen from 11 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night, but you're at the stadium.
Hmm.
You're at the game for free, basically. I mean, sure, it's going to be a lot of work or whatever, but you're at the freaking game. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't complain about that whatsoever. So I just try to always go into with that kind of mindset, you know what I mean? And that kind of makes the work like a little bit easier, even though it's a lot.
Yeah, because it just there are times where I'm there at the press box right before kickoff. I'm like, wait a minute, I can go down to the field.
Mm-hmm.
Hold up, what? But for you, I mean, I've gone the sidelines for Oregon, Washington, and some of the like the pre conference games. I see that you have spent your time. I mean, you were in the NBA studios. You were in some sports sidelines, obviously for baseball and basketball and whatnot, but and also press box. But I mean, for me, I'm like, I try to be humble. You're in a really cool spot. Just appreciate the moment. How do you kind of keep your excitement down and just remember that you're here for work instead of
Yeah.
fun?
Yeah. And that's really hard because, a lot of us have teams we root for. I mean, all of us do probably. Like I said, growing up, I was. I'll be honest with you, and I do kind of feel a little, well, not guilt, but I don't know what the word is. But I grew up, and I still am a Detroit Lions fan,
Oh, I vaguely
and
remember that about you. Actually, I vaguely remember that.
yeah, it's trust me, it's tough. But I never have covered a Lions game before, but I could imagine like if I ever got to go, I'm making up here, if they
Mhm.
play Seattle up at Lumen Field and I'm somehow covering the team, you just got to be professional as possible. This industry, you got to be non-biased. I mean, it's different if you're like covering a specific team or like in play-by-play, if you're the voice of like an NFL team, a pro franchise, or a college team, it's a little different, but you got to stay you got to stay neutral as possible. As hard as it is, you may have grown up rooting for that team, but you got to be professional just because you don't want anybody, any readers or any viewers or whatever, getting the impression like, oh, he's biased, all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely hard because, like I said, everybody has their teams that they root for. But you just got to make sure you stay professional 100% of the time because you also want to come across as professional, obviously.
Yeah, and I mean, it's still cool to say that I'm talking with you that also has not just ABC but ESPN and Pac-12 to your name as far as like places you've been and currently are. When you're at this game, like let's say you're back at that Oregon State, but just for fun as an Oregon fan, you are a public figure. How do you conduct yourself?
Right. And man, that's something I've talked to younger students before. You're kind of in the public eye, especially if you're on TV. You got to be super careful if you're in public and I tell younger students this all the time. You got to watch your social media.
Hmm.
Like I could not stress that enough. I've heard horror stories of, younger broadcasters who look to get their first job who didn't get a job because, and trust me, employers will look at your social media. Seriously, if there's any younger broadcaster or anybody in college or whatever looking to get in, I can't stress that enough. They'll look for anything. If they see even one thing that, has a red flag or whatever, they're not going to take the chance. They're not.
Hmm.
So whether it's on social media or it's in the public, you gotta make sure that you're giving off good impressions, because you just never know who you might run into at a football game. You never know who may be looking at your Instagram or your Twitter or something like that. So you got to be super, super careful, because you're not, you're in an industry where you're constantly in the public eye.
Hmm.
If you're on TV, for example. So you always just got to be super, super careful. I can't stress that enough.
So, I mean, yeah. Luckily, my Twitter is only filled with like NFL potentials. Like, oh, this guy
Right.
should get traded for this, this, this. So, to that extent, I feel safe. I feel
Yeah,
good.
exactly.
So, um, but so am I safe to assume that Washington State reached out to you to talk to some young journalism students, or was this like Sunset or?
Yeah, for a couple years, I was a part of the Edward R. Murrow Symposium up at Washington State, which is the name of the journalism school. They're the Murrow School,
Okay.
and I preached the same thing to a couple students. I said, look, if you want to have a career in this, if you're looking for your first job, you got to be careful,
Mm-hmm.
because trust me, I've heard stories, like I said before, of people not getting jobs because a news director or somebody in the athletic department will just see something and they'll be like, I don't want to, I just don't even want to take the risk on this kid.
Yeah.
So, like I said, you just got to be careful.
What is it like though to just be a part of that symposium and just see it from both sides? Because I assume you might have attended that symposium as well. Now you're the person up there preaching.
Right. It's weird. It makes you feel old, even though the first time I went up there, I was only 25. It's just like, oh my God, it's like coming full circle.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I like giving back. I will never shy away from helping someone at all. Whether they want to send me their reel or they just have questions or whatever, I'm willing to help whatever in whatever way I can, because I was in their shoes not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I know what it's like trying to figure things out, trying to get your first job. How do I become successful in this industry or hope to become successful? I have no problem helping people out. There's not at all. If they need anything, just hit me up or contact me or whatever. Kind of sounds like a selfish plug here, but I
I
but
mean,
I really do mean it.
so ABC spent some time. That you did mention earlier that, and I mean, it's not a hidden fact that if you want to be in journalism, you will have to travel. What was that process like moving from comfy Oregon after being in comfy Washington to unknown Arkansas?
Yeah, like I said before, in this industry, you're going to have to probably move somewhere you never thought you would ever be in your life. And for me, that was Little Rock, Arkansas. An opportunity came up to be the number 2 sports anchor at the Fox station there. And I was just, you know what? I mean, I like being in Oregon, it's home or whatever, but I knew for my career that was a move I was going to have to make. I was going to have to make if
Mhm.
I, wanted to get something bigger down the line. So, but at the same time, it was kind of cool, being somewhere new in the country, getting to know different kinds of people down there and just seeing what life was like down there in the South and uh, trying out the food, which is amazing, by the way.
Ooh.
You got to be careful though, because it will fatten you up pretty quickly if you're not careful. But that's for a lot of people in this industry. You'll maybe move places where you never thought you'd ever be before. And I absolutely loved my time in Arkansas. Like I said, I was there for 3.5 years and um, really, really loved it. But again, I'm really thankful to be back up here. It kind of, as much as I love living down there, it kind of also gave me a new appreciation for the Pacific Northwest. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? So, like I said, really, really happy to be back up here doing what I love.
Yeah, I back in July, like early July, I went to Utah with my partner just so she could visit her friends, and I was like, I want to see Utah. I've never been
Right.
there. Just see how it is. The one thing I will always take away is that they don't recycle, and that just confuses the holy hell out of me. I
Oh,
was like,
really?
yeah, I was like, okay, you have all these giant mausoleums, all these other like giant aquariums, but you can't recycle.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, it's just like it definitely opens up your mind to like how other places operate, and you're like,
Right.
Yeah, I really do appreciate the fact that we have recycling centers and also
Yeah.
that capability.
Right.
But yeah, it's when you spend your time there, and now are you still close with anyone that is back at that studio you worked with?
Yeah, I still keep in contact with a couple people back in Arkansas for sure. But for me, I mean, you know me since high school. I'm kind of a really quiet, reserved person.
Hmm.
Not as quiet as back in high school. I've grown up a little bit since then. I've gotten more
Yeah.
social,
just
uh,
just a little bit, a little bit.
a little bit. Like I, growing up kind of helped a little bit,
Yeah.
but no, I still try to keep in contact. That's one thing that I've really learned throughout my 20s is just being more social and staying in contact with people, even though I'm a pretty shy person in general.
Hmm.
Just being in contact with people and just, making sure I maintain relationships, because I don't want it to come off as, all right, I moved back to Oregon and then, okay, they're never going to hear from me again, or they'll
Hmm.
randomly hear from me 4 years down the line and they'll just be like, why are you just now talking to us 4 years later? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Yeah.
just to make sure you keep those relationships going and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I feel like the journalism route, you can either be still kind of shy and reserved and be a writer that's just kind of behind the scenes, or you could be outgoing and be in front of the camera and have a personality. How did you fall into that side of the line versus like staying just as a writer?
Right. Well, for me, like I said, to be at live sporting events, to do play by play, which was my ultimate passion, I knew I was going to have to. I know it's kind of weird for someone who was as shy as me wanting to be in a profession where you do nothing but talk for 2 to 3 hours for a basketball game or a football game or whatever. But it was something that I really loved. And being a part of, those classes like at Washington State, being in front of the camera, learning how to kind of get an on camera personality kind of translated into my normal life as well. And vice versa. I don't want to be going on camera to broadcast a game or do a report or a package or whatever and just like act like I have no personality, because it's kind of like, what's the joy in watching someone who has no personality or no energy or whatever. So uh, that's why even today I try to bring out that personality and energy and try to make it seem like, hey, I'm just like some guy talking to you through a screen. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Just having like a normal conversation with a buddy or something on camera. So, like I said, being a part of that, being a part of this industry has actually also really helped me personally as well. Really helped me branch out a lot and kind of open myself up a little more, not being so reserved, not being so shy,
Mhm.
having a personality, being more social with people. So it's definitely helped. I never thought it would help me like that, but it really did. And I am really, really thankful that it did, because it helped me a lot.
Yeah, even like right now, because I did some packages while working for the student broadcast station Eugene
Hmm.
and then I was like, I saw the videos again because actually on my website still. I'm like, oh god, I was super stiff. I was like, I didn't know how to be in front of a camera, but it
Yeah.
wasn't until I started this podcast. I mean, almost 60 some episodes in, and it's like I actually do feel more outgoing. I do feel like I can hold a conversation better. Retentiveness, I was like,
Hmm.
that's gone up a couple notches. So yeah, and then it's just it's crazy the benefits of actual work on your
Right.
personal life. I was like, what?
No, and the other thing I was going to say too is that, obviously being in this industry, you got to talk to people, whether it's the athletes or the coaches or whatever. So, I mean, you got to be social anyway.
Hmm.
You can't just be like, really shy. If you're really shy and you absolutely hate talking to people, this is not the industry for you, obviously.
Hmm. And that's, I mean, I was like, I mean, if I didn't have this episode or this podcast, it's like I, you can kind of see my degree over here to my right shoulder. It's
Right.
like that would literally just be gathering dust. So it's like I feel good. I'm actually like being able to use it, being able to
Yeah.
like grow from it. But for you, achieving that dream of being a play-by-play caller, because I believe I saw on your reel, it was ESPN. I can't remember the name of the game, but it was a basketball game for sure. What was that like to finally just sit down, put the headset on, and just watch and then call it all out?
Right. Well, like I said before, play-by-play is what I've always wanted to do. And when I finally got to do it like at a high level with ESPN Plus and now with Pac-12 Network, it's man, it's hard to describe the feeling of it. It's kind of just one of those moments where you're just like you look back and you're just like, wow, it's I go from this kid shooting baskets in his driveway talking to himself to all of a sudden calling games for Pac-12 Network. And it's a great feeling, and just overall, it kind of gives you a rush. You know what I mean? Like you're sitting, like if you're calling a basketball game, you're sitting courtside, you're right there, and you could hear everything the players are saying. Thankfully, we're getting back to having fans in the arenas and the stadiums again. So you feed off that energy. It's just a rush, it's really hard to describe. You're a part of the game in a sense. And it's something, like I said, I always wanted to do. And thankfully, I've been able to grow, because when I first did play-by-play, when I was doing it for the student radio station at Wazoo,
Yeah.
I had a lot of growing to do. A lot of growing to do.
Do you still have that tape or any kind of recording from that? Or
I do have a couple recordings. I'll have to look them up. But like I said, I was getting my start, so I was really, really green, still trying to find energy. I was kind of monotone in some ways. So so thankfully I've grown a lot since then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought about you because we're recording on a Monday and it's the NFL season. So my partner, she's super into football, and I was talking to her as I was watching the Seahawks versus the Titans, and I was giving her play-by-play. I was like, okay, Russ is in the shotgun. They're on the 45. They're about to, he takes the ball and he drops back, throws it to Lockett for a touchdown. I was like, I feel like Ben. Oh man, but I have no character. I have no enthusiasm. Well, there we go. Here's how we practice. How did you practice when you weren't on the clock or you weren't having to watch a game? Because I imagine there's could be some fatigue, right, when it comes to sports and play-by-play as a working career.
Yeah. So the other thing also about this industry is that it is really hard to get into. Like, it can be really hard for some people to just find that break or break in. And if you want to be specifically like a play-by-play guy, you got to get reps whatever way you can. You can't learn to be a good play-by-play by just like reading or just simply watching or listening to a guy on, like, for example, that Seahawk game yesterday on CBS. You got to go out and you got to get your reps. So when I graduated from Washington State, I was still trying to get my first job. And I kind of thought, you know what, there's got to be a better way to use my time other than just sending out resumes and college reels every single day. So what I did first was I contacted the sports information director at Portland State. And he thankfully he gave me like my own room when the Vikings were still playing at Providence Park. And I took like a digital recorder and I would just like record myself calling the game as if I was actually calling it for like a radio station or something like that. Like I prepared fully as if I was calling an actual game. And that helped me get reps and practice. And, and then I would do the same thing. I would ask the sports information director at the University of Portland if I could do the same thing. And because of that, that actually ended up landing me my first part-time opportunity with the Pilots, calling their web stream games, their non-conference games. So, but you just got to get your reps and you just got to show improvement. Like I said, even though you may not be working for a team at this very moment, there's still ways you can. I mean, there's stories all the time of, I hear of, broadcasters who are now calling for a Major League Baseball team. At one time, they would just take, like a handheld digital recorder, sit up at the very top of like a minor league ballpark, and they would do play-by-play, just record themselves and just get reps. So you just got to do whatever you can. You got to go the extra mile and you just got to practice, because, if you don't practice, how are you going to learn what you need to do better? What do you do well? How can you grow? How can you do whatever? And, just use your time wisely. I mean, even if you're sitting in front of the TV watching a NFL game on Sunday, I mean, just practice to yourself. I mean, prepare as if you're going to call, for example, the Seahawks versus Titans game. Just figure out ways to call a game, what ways you want to improve, like I said, and also find words and ways to describe the action. Don't say all the time like, Wilson over the middle to Lockett first down, Wilson over the middle lock. You got to find a way to describe different ways. That's why I say a thesaurus can be your best friend if you
Oh,
want to be a play-by-play guy. You know,
yes.
so just you got to get whatever reps you can, even if it's not on air and no one's listening. You just got to get that practice.
Are you still cringy when it comes to hearing your own voice or seeing yourself on camera?
Yeah, I actually am, to be completely honest with you. I am. I don't know why, but even like watching something from a couple months ago, I called Oregon Stanford baseball. Even watching myself, I was just like, I don't know what, I didn't do bad or anything, but it's just like that feeling like, I just don't want to listen to myself, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Anytime edit, like let's say I'm editing your episode, I'm like the very beginning, I'm like, it takes me the longest time just to get it started because like
Mhm,
I dread having to listen to myself like fumble through words. I mean, I'm not fumbling as much, but it's just like
mhm.
just hearing myself like sometimes go on a long spiel. It's like, okay, well, this is an episode about Ben, not Keoni. Let Ben talk,
Right.
and let him talk now. No, okay, all right, whatever. But just the fact alone, I mean, do you think about also the fact that you are calling these games for Pac-12 Network or ESPN Plus or ABC? Because we grew up, watching anything on those stations. Do you still get a little starstruck? You're like, oh, I'm with Pac-12. Ooh,
Yeah, a little bit. Because Pac-12 Network started, I think it was my sophomore year of college at Washington State. And I think it was one game I called my junior year. Pac-12 Network was airing the game, but obviously I was calling it for the student radio station. And I told myself one day, I'm going to be down courtside and I'm going to call a game for Pac-12 Network. And granted, that hasn't happened yet because that was up in Pullman, but it's kind of the same thing. The fact that I'm now calling games for Pac-12 Network, how long has it been since I thought of that? So it's been about 9 years or so. I do get starstruck, honestly, if that's the best way to describe it. I just sit back and I'm just like, I'm actually doing this. And like I said, it was a lot of hard work. I took some lumps, but I'm really thankful that it's paid off and I'm getting to do this now. And hopefully more opportunities with them continue to grow as time goes on with them.
yeah, and it's crazy to think like we know like a time like let's say yeah, for example, you remember a time before Pac-10 or Pac-12 network was a thing.
Mhm.
I had my first ever podcast guest back in the studio as like a follow up, and I was like, you realize the last time we talked to each other, TikTok wasn't a thing. I was like, holy crap!
Mhm.
Oh man, yeah, there was a life before Instagram. There's a life before all these things.
I know. I don't do TikTok or anything like that. I mean, I have Instagram, but
Yeah,
no, I stay away from TikTok, whatever possible.
yeah. Okay, so currently you are a play-by-play caller for the Portland Pickles, which
Right.
is Portland's in minor baseball league or minor
It's like
league.
independent summer league.
Yeah. How did that position come about for you?
So, when was it? Probably about in February. I obviously known of the Pickles for a few years, but I never got to watch a game because I've been in Arkansas for their entire existence. So I just sent a note to their general manager back in February, and I was kind of like, I'm currently starting to call games for Pac-12 Network. Don't know if you guys are looking for somebody for this summer, but if you are, would love to be a part of it. And I think he got back to me like a day later wanting to talk.
Ooh.
And I think we ended up talking like a week later, and then it was maybe a week or two, maybe, where he was like, "Yeah, we want you to be the guy." So
Hey.
it happened pretty dang quick. But the problem with that was that they told me I was the guy maybe like the first. I think it was like the first week of March. So, but I still had like 3 or so months to go before the season. So I'm kind of like, all right, this is awesome. I got the job. But I'm like, I'm ready to go right now. But I had to wait 3 extra months before the season actually
Wow.
started. But man, I don't know if you've ever been to a Pickles game, but it's definitely an interesting but amazing experience.
Uh-huh.
Like, if I had to describe the, like, it honestly, some of the games are like a Portlandia episode. Like, that's how interesting it is. It's awesome. It's
Yeah.
it's totally awesome. I loved working for them. It's basically, in my opinion, great baseball mixed with like I said, they could just film whatever's going on at that stadium on a given night, and it could just be a Portlandia episode. That's how awesome it was. Like it truly was baseball in Portland, and it was awesome to work for them this summer.
So, you talk about practice. This is obviously a perfect place for your practice or play-by-play calling. To my knowledge, Gus Johnson. I remember watching Oregon versus Ohio State. I was telling my partner, I was like, there's some things about like the way he puts emphasis on some words or some letters. It's just hilarious. Have you tried any like crazy catchphrases or any kind of different play-by-play calling for the Portland
Probably
Pickles?
the only one I really do is for basketball. If there's like a big 3-pointer, I'll say splash, because the net goes up when the ball goes through. It looks like it's a splash in the water.
Yeah.
Other than that, not really. I don't really have any other catchphrases. That's like the only thing I really do. And but no, yeah, Gus Johnson, he knows how to bring the energy for like a big moment. Yeah, I mean, he's awesome, as is a lot of other guys who call games.
Yeah, and I think also Gus Johnson was in. I want to say maybe a Madden game as the play-by-play caller. Even just like hearing, I just want to turn it up a little bit just so I could hear him say "touchdown" so and so. It's like, oh,
Right.
this guy. Well, Ben, I know you are on a time restraint, so I like to end my interviews by asking a couple hypothetical questions from this packet of 170.
Oh my God.
So you're not getting the whole thing.
Okay. I was like, wow.
Just to
Okay.
if we did, I feel like we will need more time.
Right.
So the first question I want to ask you is, if you could erase one thing from existence, even the memory of one thing, what would it be?
Of like anything, or just like me personally?
Let's do one personal and one anything.
Oh man. I know I can't think of anything that really like big that I want to erase, because I'll be honest with you, I'm thankful for everything that's happened to me up to this point.
Not even like a bad video package or a bad highlight reel or just.
Well, if you're talking that, then yeah. If you want to go there, I would probably say there are a couple games like, and granted, I was beginning my career, so I was really, really green.
Yeah.
So when I was doing work for like the University of Portland, I'm thinking back a couple basketball games that I called that I just did not do well looking back years later. But like I said, I was really green. I'm not trying to use it as an excuse or anything like that, but I wasn't fully, I'm trying to describe this as best I can. I wish I could have done a better job. You know what I mean?
It's hard to be, kind of, excuse me. It's hard to be like, not so hard on yourself, because you are still learning the ropes. You still are still trying to figure out how to talk on the camera. Because I know for me, just like sometimes in everyday work environments, like there's sometimes I say a sentence or like a little like short phrase to someone else. I'm just like, why did I say that? Makes no sense.
No, I mean, I make mistakes like that too. Like a couple of months ago, I called Oregon State volleyball, and that was the first game I've done play-by-play for in like 13 months because of the pandemic shutting sports down. And at one point, the producer back in the truck was talking to me, and I forgot to hit the cough button on my on the dial there that basically mutes you, so that only the producer could hear you, so you're not over the air.
Yeah.
And I like accidentally forgot to hit the cough button, so I accidentally said something to him on the air. But you mess up once in a while. Nobody's perfect. I mean, I'm still trying to learn and improve every single day. So
yeah.
But that was a little embarrassing thinking back, because I watched it over. I'm like, why did I say? Oh, I forgot to hit the button. So I was like, oh well.
Yeah. I was talking to another one of the former guests who is also a very creative type. I asked him, like, are us creative types? Because with me, the podcast, he in photography and videography, is like, why are we so stressed on the small details? Because we coughed or whatnot, but then it's like in the grand scheme of it all, it's just like it's gonna be on someone's blimp for like a second or two. It's like
right.
It's a hard thing to try and turn that off part in your brain.
Yeah, you pick apart every single minuscule thing, and even if there's even one thing, you could have like an amazing call for an entire game, but if you just make one mistake, even if it's just for 1 second, it ruins your night or
Yeah,
it ruins your week. I'm guilty of that too, but yeah, I mean, I guess that's just the industry we're in. We want to make sure everything is perfect. You know what I mean?
we're perfectionist.
Yep,
I mean, you more than me since I can edit my medium. You
that's
you,
true.
you
I can't
cannot.
edit play by play.
Okay, so my last question to you.
Hmm.
Uh, are you kind of a sci-fi movie fan or any kind of like into?
Not real. I've never
Not
honestly
really.
been a big movie fan, to be honest with you.
Really?
I've never been a big movie guy.
Huh. Okay, maybe this one's. I've always wondered that because like I mean I get it. Things are
Mhm.
not common for everyone, but it's like for me, movies just like it's a great way to escape for like
Right.
an hour and a half or something like that. So
No, I
this
totally get you.
this one might be more up your alley then. If you could call yourself when you were 15 years old for a 12-minute conversation, what would you tell yourself?
Oof.
That one I was like, that's the
How
one.
many do we have? Like an hour or two? Jeez.
Well, I mean,
Uh
we do, but you got a place to be
right.
soon.
I'll try to some. I'll try to think of just. I can't just say just one thing. I'd probably say the first thing is
What about three things? Three things
three
you tell
things.
yourself.
Okay, three
Okay.
things. First thing I would probably tell myself is, hey, obviously stick with your dream of play by play. It's going to work out. It may take a little while. You'll take your lumps or whatever. You'll grow, but it will eventually get there and you'll enjoy it a ton. Number two, personally, I would probably tell myself, hey, be more social, be more outgoing. Because, like I said, we talked about this already, but you knew me in high school. I was very shy. And that's kind of one thing I look back on. I kind of wish I kind of would have been a little bit more social during the sunset days.
Hmm.
Um, so, try to be more outgoing. Number three, what would be a third one? Um, what would be a third one at 15? What would I tell my 15-year-old self?
15. We are what? Freshmen?
Freshman,
Yeah.
stop wearing Abercrombie shirts. I was guilty. I was one of those kids when I started high school freshman year that I tried to wear, Abercrombie and Fitch and like American Eagle because
Yeah.
I mean I think that was the style at the time, right?
It was. It was.
It
It was.
was. I tried to go with the trends way too much. I was a try hard because I wanted to. I mean, high school's a scary thought when you're moving up from. I can't remember. Did you go to Cedar Park or Meadow Park?
Cedar Park.
Okay, yeah. So I went Cedar too. So
Yeah, we've known each other
going
a
from
very
Cedar
long
Park to
time.
Sunset High School for anybody at that age was probably a daunting thought. So
Yeah.
you try to look as cool as possible.
I'm sure also some TV shows are like, oh, they have the crazy like, oh, the good looking freshman gets a good looking senior girl. And it's like I'm sure. I mean, media always plays out that kind of
Yeah.
standards in her head of like, oh, I'm gonna go to high school. I'm wearing my Abercrombie, my puka necklaces, and just
I did not wear the necklaces. I just wore, those Abercrombie shirts that had like the rips like
yeah,
right here.
yeah.
I think I bought a pair of jeans that kind of had the rips too. And I look back, I'm just like, thank God I have no pictures of myself wearing that. That could be easy blackmail material.
I mean, nope.
Yeah.
I was about to think if there are any photos of you in the high school yearbook, but
The only
we'll look it up
not
later.
there are a couple, but it's all just like either baseball stuff
Mhm.
or I think there was one picture like senior year of me like in the journalism or the what was it called? The scroll when we were working on
Oh,
the newspaper.
I was trying to also remember what the name of the newspaper was, but I was like, what the
Yeah, that took me a
heck?
second too. I was like, what was it called again? Oh, the scroll.
So I have a little bit longer, but I just want to say congratulations on your fitness journey and your new physique that you have worked your ass off basically to get. Because speaking as someone that I had that Asian metabolism where I can get on these diets and do all these things drastically, but then it's like, oh, I want a rice, something with rice, and then it's like
Right.
it's all gone. How was just that journey alone? What made you want to kind of kick in the high gear and maybe focus more on your health?
Yeah. So part of the reason I kind of did let myself go a little bit, this was probably back in like fall/winter of last year. Uh, it was just because I was really down in the dumps basically. Like I said, I had a play-by-play job in Arkansas, but because of the pandemic and sports getting shut down, my
Mhm.
play-by-play job obviously was gone. And I moved back here. Nothing was happening play-by-play wise, and I just like got myself into a rut basically.
Mhm.
I didn't care about how I looked. I didn't care if I worked out or not, and all that kind of stuff. But thankfully, because of a inspiration from a late friend I had down there, I completely turned it around. I started running more, run every single day. Thankfully, the neighborhood I live in right now is really hilly, so that adds on to a little bit more of the exercise. And then I want to say it was maybe probably around early May or something when gyms started opening back up. I finally got back into lifting weights again, and it's just one of those things where it's cliche, but you look good, you feel good. You
Mhm.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's I've really gotten a lot of confidence back. Obviously getting the opportunities with Pac-12 Network definitely helped for sure, but at the same time, just like improving my health, improving what I look like, has also really helped as well. And I know it can be challenging for a lot of people, but you just got to find that motivation and find that confidence that you can improve yourself in whatever way possible. And I was really thankful that I did get to that point.
Yeah, the last place I lived at had a bunch of hills. And every time
Mhm.
I'm like, this sucks. But yeah, it definitely build leg strength climbing those
Yep.
hills, and then both like physically and metaphorically just conquering that. And I'm happy for you, and it's
Thanks, man.
awesome that you're able to squeeze an hour every day because I do know how back to back to back, at least from the glimpse I've had of the journalism industry. Yeah, it's back to back to back.
Yeah, there's no set schedule in this business at
No.
all. You never know when you're going to be working every single week. So,
Mhm.
but no, appreciate you inviting me on for sure.
Yeah. So Ben, one last thing. I
Mhm.
promise you one last thing. Where can the people find you on social media?
So on Twitter, I'm at Ben_Creighton TV. Creighton, like the university.
Yeah.
Instagram, I think it's the same thing. I think it's Ben Creighton TV. So yeah, you can find me on Twitter or on Instagram if you want to go follow along.
Yeah. And if folks you want to see some of Ben's foreign packages, it's also on YouTube.
Yeah, yeah. I forgot the YouTube page.
I subscribed, I followed. I gotta support the friends where they are.
For sure. Appreciate that, man.
Yeah, thanks for I mean, I know just you have a podcast episode now. I know I'm sure you've been interviewed. You have been interviewed before in the past, but it's like, it's I'm just excited to get your story out there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. This is, believe it or not, this is actually the first podcast I've ever been on, to be completely honest with you. Yeah, seriously. So
Yes.
you should feel pretty special.
I know. I was you're kind of one of the big fish. I was just like, okay, I knew he's been with ESPN and Pac-12. He's done all this, has associated with all these big titles. Will he say yes? I don't know. So, thank you
No, man.
so
The
much.
one the
Thank you.
one thing too is that you gotta stay humble. You
Yeah.
gotta stay humble. You can't get too big on yourself. It doesn't matter what level you are,
Mhm.
and because unfortunately I've worked around some people who think they're, hotter than bleep, you know what I mean? And it just like it hurts them.
Yeah.
You don't want to work with them. No employer wants to work with them. And
Yeah.
overall, you just got to be a good person and stay humble. So that's what I continue to preach to people.
Forgot to mention you can't curse on this, but
That was you can curse.
yeah, I mean, I was also thinking, I was like, I tell him, but I was like, he's also thinking back to what he said about being a public figure. It's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I got your back on this one, man.
Oh, I appreciate that.
All right, Ben, enjoy. I mean, I want to check out Portland Pickles game before the summer's over, or I guess summer's almost.
Yeah, the season unfortunately ended a couple weeks ago, so you got to check it out next summer for sure.
Next summer for sure. All right,
Yeah.
man. Thank you so much for sticking around until the end of the episode. If you like what you heard or watch and would like more episodes from Keoni Chats, the show can be found on all podcast platforms and YouTube under Keoni Chats. If you want to keep in the loop on other creative content releases, you can follow KC Media on Instagram and Twitter under KC Media 13. And then on Facebook, it'll be under Conlu K Media. So if you'd like to be a guest email me at kcmedia13@yahoo.com. Tell me your story. I'd love to get you on the show. So until the next episode, everyone, please take care.